Hey guys, Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina, and it's time for that Sunday night live stream show. We're going to be giving away free trips, talking fishing, having a good time. Thanks for joining us and being a part of the show tonight. We're looking forward to a good time. I've got Captain Will in studio with me tonight, and we're going to be talking about how to do the 39-hour trip like a pro. Plus, we're going to be talking about what's going on now, what's coming up, weather-wise, all that good stuff as well. So, thanks for joining us tonight. Remember, if you want to win the free fishing trips we're giving away tonight, we're going to be giving away $1,500 in free trips tonight and every Sunday night during these live stream shows. In order to have a chance to win the 5-hour half day for two, the 10-hour all day for two, or the 39-hour trip for one lucky winner, you do have to comment one time on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream. You can watch on any Facebook page we stream to. You can watch on YouTube, Instagram, all the different places that we stream to in different platforms. But you have to go to Hubbard's Marina's Facebook page and comment once in order to be entered for a chance to win. Then you have to watch the whole show live, because at random intervals, we'll do the giveaways, and you've got 5 minutes or less to text us your full home address to claim your free trip and prove you're watching live. So comment once, watch live, and be ready to text us within 5 minutes if you're chosen as one of those lucky winners. Also, we want to make sure we give a shout out to our friends over at Gator Jim's Tackle, 3301 Pinellas Point Drive South in St. Pete. They're the ones who bring you this show. They are our title sponsor of our live stream show. They are great people. They have a killer selection, killer deals, stuffed to the gills with tackle, floor to ceiling. It's an incredible place. If you haven't stopped by to see our friends over at Gator Jim's Tackle, you're missing out. So definitely stop on down and tell them Hubbard's Marina sent you. Also, we want to make sure we give a shout out to all of our supporters out there that are watching the show tonight and in our supporters group. It helps fuel the show and do more cool stuff. So really appreciate all of you in our supporters group. Remember, it's only $4.99 a month. You get access to our private supporters group, some behind-the-scenes material, info, and communication. It's a great time. So join us in that. Plus, you get the private after show, and you get a lot of behind-the-scenes info and first-hand knowledge. So think about becoming a supporter today. And then finally, before we get into the photos and show you what we've been catching and talk a little bit about the weather and then start chatting with Captain Will, we want to, of course, give a shout-out to all those who are sending stars. Stars are away on Facebook to show your support and help fuel the show as well. We had Ed Mack, Angie Darling, Todd Stutzman, Barry Long, Scott Flynn, Mick Higgins, Eric Seberg with a big 1,000 stars. Thanks, buddy. Robert Riggs, Larry White with a big 1,000 stars. Sam Lang with 830. Appreciate you, man. Brian Eakins, Angel Perez with a big 1,200. Thank you, Angel. D and Mike Beers with 1,200. Thank you guys as well. Keith White, Don Schuett with the big 800. What's going on, Don? And Destiny Hetz as well. Appreciate you all for sending stars and helping to fuel the show. Now, with that, let's get right into these photos and talk a little bit about what we're catching, what we're seeing now, and then we'll get into the weather, what's going on now, and then start chatting with Captain Will as well. So, first things first, let's see what we've been catching inshore, and then we'll work our way nearshore and offshore. This past week, the redfish bite's still pretty steady for us. They spread it out a little bit. There's some concentrations that are feeding well, others that aren't so cooperative. But the guys are definitely finding them out there on the flats, the mangrove shorelines, the oyster bars, soft plastics working really well. Some of the white bait's starting to become a really hot option too. As that water warms up, bait shows up, they're starting to get a little bit more trained in to that white bait action. It's been a pretty solid, steady bite though. A lot of black drum lately. Been seeing some big black drum on the bridges already. It's
that's cool. Early, yeah.
Yeah, it might be that time. Get a big dog underneath the main dock here shortly. We've been seeing some nice snook action start to pick up. It's been a little bit tough overall, but this warm-up this week should hopefully help. It's been a little chilly overnight and in the mornings, but the next couple days it's supposed to warm up really nicely for us and hopefully flush out some more of these snook. They've been hanging back in the upper bay and up back bay areas, but they're going to start rolling out here soon. Our friend Scott has definitely been on some nice trout out there on the beaches. We're seeing some pretty darn good trout action all the way around the area. It doesn't matter if you're out on the beach or on the flats. We've been seeing some nice trout action for sure. And it's been pretty exciting, to say the least. Scott and his buddy Pete out here with some nice big trout on the beach, too. So soon they're going to be on the snook on the beach. Probably another few weeks, I would say. Maybe more than that. Maybe like a month and a half. Once we get into later April, early May, the snooks start to make their way on the beach and kind of hit the peak in June. But that's an exciting time of year for us.
Oh, yeah.
Getting those snook around the dock in the morning, it always makes things a little bit more exciting, right?
And it got so cold this year that they just left, basically.
Disappeared, man. It really, really pushed the snook up into the bayous, the creeks, the rivers. But the trout action has been going really well around the area, from the jetty to the beach, all the way to the back bay and upper bay waters. The trout have been aggressive this past week. Sheepshead pretty good as well. Cold tolerant species like the trout, redfish, sheepshead have definitely been the most active, but we're starting to see that transition. A couple pompano, a couple flounder, a couple snook, and things are starting to shift around. Early season tarpon. That's another exciting thing. You're a tarpon fiend. You saw one?
I saw him outside the pass the other day, busting on the surface.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's exciting.
Past the breakers.
Really?
Yeah.
Out there on the sandbar.
Yep.
Wow. I always like that because sometimes you're flying the drone in the morning watching the boats leave, and once the boat gets out of range, you're flying the drone back, and I always turn the camera down and look at the sandbar. Sometimes you'll find some dolphins or some manatees to take cool videos of, but it's even more fun when you see the tarpon busting on the bait. Yeah. It's really, really interesting and entertaining, to say the least. All right, let's move on to our nearshore photos and nearshore and offshore and show you what we're catching out a little deeper here. Captain Lauren showing off a nice flatty.
Yes,
the flatty action is picking up for us.
They are there.
Yeah, some catch and release gag grouper action, plenty of the heads and tails, a lot of happy people out fishing lately. The nearshore bite has picked up pretty quickly, and we have these days where it's rough and get close to those cold fronts, the bite shuts down a little bit, but picks up really fast. Like this Saturday morning, it was still a little bumpy. The water was still a little stirred up because it was so rough Friday. So Saturday morning's half day was a little bit tough, but the afternoon half day just smoked them. Really, it was like a 180. The afternoon half day got a keeper red grouper. They caught and released a permit. They had some nice keeper hogfish, a big mangrove, and then like almost 300 grunts or gray snapper. And the morning trip struggled to get like 100 gray snapper, 150.
Dang, yeah, that was a definite turnaround.
Yeah, it's amazing. This time of year, a lot of times the afternoon trips can almost have better fishing.
Yeah, especially with the sun warming the water up, for sure.
Yeah, this cooler months, a lot of times people ask, what's the better half day? And most of the time, it doesn't much matter. It's 6 to 1, half a dozen of another. But this time of year, when it's cold out, sometimes that afternoon bite is pretty darn good.
Yep.
Here's a solid nearshore mangrove on a recent 5-hour half day on the Flying Hub 2. The mangrove snapper have just absolutely fired up. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is a thing right now.
Yeah.
We've been getting them on the half day on the big boat too. Yeah. Numbers of them as well.
Yeah, today's all-day trip, Captain Dylan Kilgore was running it. He said he got like 15, 18 nice mangroves, couple hogfish. They got a red grouper today on the 10-hour, and Captain Joe came off the Flying Hub 2, and Captain Joe was pissed because the red grouper they brought in on the 10-hour was bigger than any red grouper they had caught on the extreme trip.
Oh, yeah, they had a big one.
Yeah, and Jeff Reedy, who goes fishing with us a lot, a regular, he said it's the biggest red grouper he's seen so far this season.
Really?
Even 39-hour quality fish. Joe called it a 20-pounder.
We had a fat one today. We didn't weigh it. It wasn't in the jackpot, but it wasn't 20 pounds either.
Yeah, it was a hog on a 10-hour, which is not normal and definitely cool to see. But they got a couple nice red grouper, that big, huge one, of course, and it was a pretty good overall 10-hour trip. Not stellar, but definitely a good trip. Some nearshore sheepshead, that's been weird too. We've been getting a couple.
We had nice a dozen one day.
A dozen?
On a half day. A dozen sheeps, 3 hogs, and one of those giant flounder.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The old inshore slam on a nearshore fishing trip. Yeah, those big sheepshead are out there spawning, that's for sure. Here's an example of one of those 10-hour stringers. You can see big mangrove snapper mixed in there. The lanes, the vermilion starting to pick up. It's been a great time to get out there near shore. Some catch and release gag grouper fun. This one's held out pretty far to the camera, so it's a little bit misleading, but that's a pretty solid mangrove.
3 to 5 pounder, yeah.
Yeah, on a 10-hour, which is awesome to see. Here's an 8-pounder from the 12-hour night trip. So Ken here caught a 8.9 pound mangrove snapper, won the jackpot, but his second biggest mangrove was 8.5 pounds.
Crazy.
2 mangrove snapper over 8 pounds on that 12-hour night. That was his first 12-hour night, but that's a little misleading because he's done a 39-hour. He's done a 12-hour extreme. He fishes the 10-hour religiously, so he knows what he's doing. But yeah, his first 12-hour night trip, he went out there and smoked it, and he was a little trepidatious. He didn't necessarily want to go on the 12-hour. He kept asking Captain Joe. He talked to me about it. He's like, "Is that trip like really a good one? Are you sure? Should I do it?" And I was like, "Dude, just go. You'll have a good time. It's different." Yeah. And he went out there and laid the hammer down.
That's funny.
That's pretty awesome to see. So as you can see, overall, the bite's been improving. I would say nearshore and offshore, we've seen an uptick recently in the action. And nearshore, the big news, nearshore would be bigger mangroves, more mangroves. The lane snapper have been picking back up. We're starting to see more vermilions. And offshore, I'd say the red grouper bite's improved. What do you think?
Yeah, the red grouper bite's solid in the grounds. The mangroves haven't really, they're here right now. They haven't really left and gone up to the grounds. We're doing well on them, but we're working for them up there, you know. But we had maybe 250 this trip, and we had some big ones too. But yeah, it's a weird year for the mangroves. It got so cold they came in close to shore and stayed there. I feel like.
And some big dogs came into shore. I don't know if I told you this, but I was talking to my partner, Mike Anderson, and he was on a trip with Glenn Taylor doing some filming, and they caught a 12-pound mangrove in an area that we'd be fishing on a half-day trip or a really shallow 10-hour trip. A 12-pound mangrove. That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, that's incredible fish.
One of the biggest ones we've caught on a 39-hour was just over 12 pounds that I can remember.
Yeah, Cliff had one.
Yeah, 12.9 pounds. Yeah. That big one, Cliff.
So only one bigger than that, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a horse. Amazing to see for sure. So that's what's going on now. Things are picking up. Plus pelagics. I mean, we got the mackerel back inshore. We're starting to see some bait. You guys had a nice big tuna on the 39-hour trip. Didn't land it, but you had it to the boat.
I was up in the wheelhouse, and I see him run up there with the gaff, and the guy had it on a jig, and we'd been catching a bunch of groupers on the jigs, and they fray you up right in front of your jig, and he snapped it, and I was like, how did he snap it? And I thought for a minute, and he had frayed line nick on the front of that jig.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It happens to me too. Like you're on that 39-hour trip, and you get into the bite, you're catching fish, and you go to rebait, and you see that little fray, you see that little nick in your line, but you're like, should I stop fishing and retie, or the bite's on, I'm catching fish, should I go back down and risk it? And you're playing with fire.
Yeah, especially jigging like that.
Yeah, you don't want to risk it and break your heart with a big tuna just below the water, you know. But at the same time, you go to retie, you might miss the bite too.
Yeah, absolutely.
The guy next to you might catch the 20-pound red grouper you wanted. So it's a challenging thing we run into for sure. So that's what's going on bite-wise and what we're catching. Let's talk a little bit about the weather here quickly, and then we'll get into some questions. We're going to go to hubbardsmarina.com. We're going to click fishing trips, and then scroll down to the weather links page. On our weather links page, I always like to start on the wind finder forecast area. I go to the 5 and 10-hour forecast area first, just to get an idea of what the weather's doing. It gives you a good graphical display of what the wind's doing. And as you can see, the first half of the work week, today, Monday, Tuesday, and most of Wednesday looks really good. Beautiful weather. Doesn't get any better, really. A little rain chance Tuesday, but nothing crazy. Wednesday for most of the day is pretty good, but it starts to pick up Wednesday night and start blowing a little bit for us. Thursday looks a little nautical, but not terrible, at least near shore. And then Friday, the wind continues to pick up. The seas build up a little bit. So Thursday, not so great. Friday looks a little worse. Starts to calm down for us Saturday and then Sunday as well. So we won't look too far ahead because these forecasts change a lot. But we know with confidence the best days to go fishing are definitely going to be Monday and Tuesday and into Wednesday as well. Thursday, Friday potentially might be a little bit breezier and bumpier. So if you're planning a trip this week, try to aim for that first half of the work week, and you'll have a better chance weather-wise. But potentially the second half of the work week could change, right? I mean, how often do we see these forecasts like completely shift?
And this time of year,
especially.
too.
Yeah.
And the winter, a cold front's coming down. They know it's coming. This time of year, things could stall. And
yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head perfectly. This time of year, these cold fronts get forecasted, but so often they just fall apart and don't quite make it down. And the forecast 2 days out, 3 days out could go from 20 to 25 knot winds to 5 knot winds.
Just die. Yeah, absolutely nothing.
And be beautiful. So especially this time of year, only look a couple days in advance. Don't put too much credit in those 5-6 day forecasts, because they will change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse.
Yeah, like I'm looking at the weekend for the 39. I'm like, all right, that'll be okay by then.
Yeah, we should be okay. Yeah. Hurry up and wait, and we'll find out, right? Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit about the weather. We talked a little bit about what we've been catching. Let's get into some discussion with Captain Will here now. Will, you've been with us at Hubbard's Marina for how many years now?
I'm pretty sure I was 20 when I started, right after the hurricanes in 2004.
Dang, that's crazy. So in 2004, so easy math, it's been 21 years?
Yep, 19 then. I was 19 then.
Wow, that's crazy. So Will's been with us for 2 decades and started as a crew member, now is a captain of the 39-hour trip, and you pretty much almost exclusively that entire period have been on those long-range trips.
Yeah, it's a trip where that's basically a whole week's worth of work. One trip, or if you do 2, that is a full week of work. So it's a trip where we have a different group of people that do almost just those trips.
Yeah, and when you started, we used to do 39-hour trips maybe once a week, maybe a couple times a month. And every year when I go to do the schedule, I'm like, this is the most 39-hour trips I've ever put in the schedule. I've said that every year for like 4 or 5 years. It's
crazy.
It's the amount of 39-hour trips that we're doing nowadays is nuts. We're offering them more frequently, trying to spread out the demand as much as we can, because we don't want to run full trips, and we want trips with 30, 35, 40 people because it's a better experience for everybody, from the captain to the crew to the customers. It's red snapper season that it gets chaotic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially, I don't get it. Why is it such a rush at the beginning of red snapper season? I mean, the first, I had someone today on the phone, frustrated, like almost in tears, because he couldn't book June 1st, 3rd, 4th. Like, he wanted the first week in June. And I'm like, dude, red snapper's going to be open until probably mid-September. And in August last year, we had probably 6 trips that had 20, 25, 20, 30, less than 30 people.
Yeah.
Some of them less than half full. And these were red snapper trips, but just people, it's August. Forget about them.
Weird.
Yeah, it's like June, the first 2 weeks of June, everybody and their brother comes out of the woodwork and wants to fish for red snapper. By the end of June, it starts to taper off. By the end of July, people are like, what's a red snapper?
Normal.
And then by August, people are like over it. They're done fishing for them. It's interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting. And this year in particular, we did okay in the first week or 2, and then they were tricky for a couple of weeks. And right at the start of the season, it was tricky.
But then it
fishing.
picked back up.
And then we did really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it picked back up, and we had a great rest of the season.
Yeah, it was like the first couple weeks of June was a little tricky.
Yeah.
And then it picked up at the end of June, and then it got a little tricky at the beginning of July again, and then it picked up at the end of July and stayed consistent, really, all the way through until it closed August 27th, and then it reopened for us. What are you pulling up here?
Old stuff.
Old school photos of Will?
Yeah. Just pictures of Will over the years.
Oh, yeah. There's some old school photos in here, too.
I scoured them.
I was about to say, I don't know what you're flipping through here, Josh.
I looked, trust me.
Man, some memories there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's Kyle.
And little Richie.
Little Richie Ricardo. That's awesome. Some good fishing. Blackfin tuna, what would you be trolling for a blackfin tuna right now?
the morning time or the light hours, like a darker color lure, and that is generally a lot of times the best time to troll for them in the early morning.
Yeah.
Right. When a lot of times I like to make a move right then. As soon as the sun comes up, we'll try to get to a different area and fish a different species. But just in general, I like a darker lure in the morning, and even an orange. I've caught them on an orange or even a red and white.
Yeah, but always daytime. The lip diving plugs.
Generally a lip diving plug.
Like a Rapala X-Wrap Magnum or Nomad DTX.
Yes.
You like the Nomad more than the Rapala?
The Nomad will last longer, I feel like. The Rapalas they work well, but one or two fish and they're going to not
track well.
No.
Yeah.
Especially behind the Florida or big. I don't know how they do on little boats. Maybe they do better, but but the Florida, if you catch a couple good fish on a Rapala, it's scraped up and it's jumping out of the water and tangling people up.
Yeah, it won't sit in the water anymore. That's interesting. Yeah, we're not live on TikTok tonight. Unfortunately, we were a little behind schedule, and TikTok gave us a little bit of problems, so we didn't go live on TikTok. But we will next week, and we'll be back live on TikTok here very shortly. All right, so one thing I did want to mention here before we get too far into it, we're going to start bringing up some of your questions as well. So if you have a question for Captain Will or myself, you can text us your questions at the phone number at the bottom of the screen. Remember, our main office number is 727-393-1947. Paul Sabatis gave us some stars as well. Adam Franklin hit us up. Thank you, Adam. Alexis Stanford as well. Don Schuett with another 800 stars. Thank you, buddy. Brad Lackey, Gary Camage, LaShonda Brown with the big 500. Destiny Hetz as well. Thank you all. Don Schuett with 1,600 in total tonight. Thank you, Don. Let's see. Hopefully him and Libby make it back out here soon.
Yeah.
They're due. Libby's on the backside of maternity leave from fishing.
Oh, yeah.
So she's ready.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. First question, if I was going on the 10-hour, should I rig a double snell hook to have a better chance for mangrove snapper like on the 39?
I would say at this time of year, absolutely, but you don't do the big snail that you would do on a 39, like a 5 or 6 alt owners. You don't need you do a lighter.
Yeah. Basically a scaled down version of what you're fishing on a 39. A lot of times on the 10-hour trips, like 30 pound, maybe 40 pound, and like probably 4-aught hooks is what I would go with, 3 or 4-aught hooks. And a lot of people on the 10-hour don't target mangroves.
No.
And we've had this guy, Alex, came out with us back in the day. He was going to school at UT, and he would go out in a 10-hour, and people would be fishing for hogfish, and he'd come back with 10 mangroves, limited out on mangroves almost every time. And what he was doing is he was fishing like everybody else was for hogfish, but instead of using a knocker rig on a single hook, he was using a knocker rig on a double snell, and he was using a small chunk of thread fin.
Lightweight.
Yeah. Super lightweight, like a 1-ounce egg sinker, and just stroke the mangroves. So people just don't target them on the 10 hours. If you go out in the 10-hour and you target the mangroves, especially right now, you got a really good shot at catching some really nice ones for sure.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, you could use live shrimp to target target mangroves on a 10-hour, but you're also going to you have the chance for catching hogfish, lanes. You get a lot of bycatch if you're using shrimp. If you want to target mangroves, do that small chunk of thread fin.
Yeah, or cut bait of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah. You like the cut bait other than thread fins.
It's not in certain, like, it just because it stays on the hook better, or like a little strip of bonita or mackerel. Even mackerel's one of my favorites.
Yeah. A little Boston mackerel.
Yeah, or even other whatever mackerel you may have.
Yeah, Spanish mackerel that you trolled up.
Yeah,
I got you. All right, so cut bait. Even like if you're on a 10-hour, there's plentiful like spot tails or squirrelfish or like a white grunt. You use one of those.
Maybe. But the oily fish, really.
So you're thinking more of the bonita, the mackerel, because it's more of a scent.
Blue runner.
There you go. So that's good. It's sushi quality right there.
Yeah.
Nice. Are the red groupers still inside 20 fathoms? Yes. Our deep water closure or 20 fathom closure is ongoing in February and March. So for the entire month of February and March, we can't keep red grouper unless we're inside of 20 fathoms or 120 feet. So you caught 50 some odd red grouper in the last couple of trips. More than that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this trip you had how many? 40?
Yeah, we had 40 and probably almost 35, maybe 35. There, I don't count them all because we're stringing them. We don't have them tagged separately. So I'm thinking at least 35 last trip and maybe 40 this trip.
Yeah,
and they were bigger this trip.
And we're catching that many red grouper even with the deep water closure. That's why they need to get rid of the deep water closure, and we're this close. Since I've been involved in the council process since 2016, I bring up the 20 fathom closure and how ridiculous it is that it's still a thing and needs to get taken away. And I failed every single time. I brought it up last year, and I was so close, but they were worried because red grouper season was only like 6 months, and they were talking about it being 5 months this year because it's supposed to close end of May or mid-May this year.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, we don't want to take that away because it might make the season even shorter. And I argued against that because we still catch plenty of red grouper even with the closure going on. But
yeah, we're catching the same number.
Yeah, but they're just making us work harder for them, but we still catch the same number. I argued against that. I lost. I backed off of it. But now with this huge increase in red grouper coming, they're talking about red grouper quota more than doubling. We're going to go from like a 5-6 month season back to probably a 12-month season on red grouper.
That'd be nice.
Hopefully in 2026 if they can get the rules in place in time. And there's a play right now. There's a chance. There's a slight chance of hope that they might even extend this year's red grouper season because it doesn't make any sense. They're going to close it in end of May or mid-May this year because red grouper is overfished. The quota's been exceeded, and then come January 1st, they're going to be like, oh, we got tons of red grouper. Fish all year for them. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make any logical sense, but that's the way MSA works, the Magnuson-Stevens Act, so it's frustrating. But long story short, because red grouper quota's going up so much, the whole argument of, we can't take away the 20 fathom closure because the season will get shorter has gone away. So at this last meeting, I was pushing the pedal down like, hey, we got to get rid of this thing. Let's get rid of it while we're increasing this red grouper quota. So hopefully it won't be a thing.
It really, what it does, we don't catch any less red grouper, but we can't go out there and fish for the heads and tails that are out there with the deep water red grouper, the big vermilions and porgies and stuff like that in the daytime. So we're pretty much just catching red grouper. Well, we're getting porgies and stuff too, but we're missing the big vermilions. That's what they're getting us with.
Yeah, and that's frustrating. So we want to get back out there, and we want to have the flexibility to fish where we want.
Yeah. We're drifting up to the line and having to move right now over and then repeating that.
Yeah. Frustrating stuff. All right, so let's see what other questions we have. How do they catch trout off the beach? I've only caught trout in the grass flats. Fishing those little channels along the beach, those little gullies in between the sandbars. And fishing some soft plastics. Really, the live shrimp has been key lately. Light tackle, 10-pound test, maybe 15-pound leader. You could go like 8-pound test and with a 15-pound leader and a small hook, like a size 2 hook, tail hook the shrimp, and just have it out there in that little highway. And keep looking for them, and you'll find them for sure. Are the kingfish around yet?
I know. I've been wanting to fish for them. We've been catching little mackerels on the half day. Like within the last week, the mackerels came in.
You know, on the radio show yesterday morning, we were talking to Van Hubbard, who fishes out of Boca Grande, and he said their guys down there off of Boca were into the kingfish, hot and heavy. They were like schoolie-sized kingfish, nothing big, but there was a nice-sized school of kingfish off Boca Grande, which is not far away by water, only about an hour drive in a moderately fast boat. It's a lot longer of a drive by car, but by boat it's not that far away. So I don't think it's going to be too long before we have those kings here.
One more south wind, a day of south wind.
Yeah, one more moon phase, one more south wind. Who knows? We just need that water temperature to get just about right. We'll be there for sure. All right, what bait is best for red snapper? Anything is what I always say.
Yeah.
What's your favorite bait for a red snapper? If you were going to drop down and you wanted to catch the biggest red snapper possible, what are you doing?
Now for the biggest red snapper, I like a big live bait, a
big
pigfish. You know what works well, which is an odd bait. Tom Tate from the Half Day is one of my favorites.
Really?
They love those. They eat those out there. They live out there.
doing that half-day trip before a 39-hour trip is like a cheat code for some of those bigger fish. Like if you want a big amberjack, a big gag, a big red snapper, doing that 5-hour trip before the 39-hour, you're just getting like quality bait.
Yeah, the big fish and the tomtates from the half day are my two favorite baits. And then cut baits too. I like a real fresh cut, like I was saying, any kind of oily fish.
Bonita, mackerel.
Yeah.
Like a big chunk of bonita on a double snell rig. And you can even separate your hooks because your hook spacing depends on your bait. So if you're going to drop down a chunk of bonita like this, you can put 4 inches between your hooks. Mm-hmm. And, man, nothing beats. And me personally, if I'm dropping down for a big red snapper, I'm going to use bigger hooks because you're matching your bait size. So I'm going to use like an 8, 9, 10-aught hook. And then also, you're dropping it down really slowly because I like trying to hook them up off the bottom.
They will, yeah.
The big dogs on top a lot, right?
Absolutely. And then sometimes you get down there and you've got a huge bait and you come up with a red snapper that big.
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, that's so ravenous. There's probably 10 of them eating it too when that happened.
Yeah, right? And you just got unlucky and hooked the small one.
Yeah.
So if you were dropping down a big bait like that, what are you doing? Just rocking it to the bottom, or you got to drop it out of eyesight and stop it and drop it down slowly like amberjack fishing?
A live bait, I'm probably dropping it to the bottom. Maybe sit it for a second and then reel it up if I didn't get a bite and drop it again slow. Mm-hmm. But a dead bait, right on when we first got there, a dead bait, a lot of times they'll be up in the water and just drop it slow, and they'll start thunking on the way down. And just now you're keeping in free spool. Mm-hmm. And then let him eat it, and sometimes he doesn't even go anywhere, and then you just start reeling, you're like, oh, there he is. But I wait for him to try to like run with it or something, if they bite it on the way down. Walk the dog to him, basically.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But when you first get to a spot, that's the key too. That's when they're going to bite up in the water. They'll go down, they'll get spooked after a minute, but that first drop, they'll be up in the water a lot of times.
The big dogs. Mm-hmm. And then towards the end of the spot, a lot of times they come up in the water column.
They got chummed up by the end,
They get excited for sure. Can't cut mackerel anymore, but you can cut Boston mackerel, Captain Van Hubbard. Boston mackerel is the one we have in the office.
Yes,
we got the Bonita as well. But yes,
Tinker mackerel.
Mackerel. That's the one we get for bait a lot too. We get a lot of different bait mackerels, that's for sure. Is the Hubbard's Marina Bull Bay 20-40 pound a good choice for mangrove snapper? That's the rod I use for mangrove snapper. It's a really good option. We do have a lot of different rod options at Hubbard's Marina. We have the custom Bull Bay rods. We have the custom Fletcher's rods. We've got 2 different lines of custom offshore fishing series for Hubbard's Marina. So definitely plenty of options and plenty of reels as well. Let's see, what other questions do we have? How many hours do some of your boats have on them? It depends on the boat, and it depends on the rebuilds. I mean, the Florida's been rebuilt twice. The Friendlies had new motors put in, so everything's different. Each boat's a little different.
Yeah, I just saw the Florida today. Yesterday, I noticed that.
It's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up.
It's coming up, that's for sure. Rebuild January 2026. Do you catch any Cubera snapper in your area? And if so, how do you target them? I mean, we caught a 111 pounder. That was the biggest that I've recognized catching. You've caught yourself. You caught one.
Yeah, I've caught one. And they're just very rare.
Yeah,
and they are mean. They break you off a lot of times too. We caught one last Inlet red snapper season last year. We caught one.
I feel like personally, we see them more frequently come in at the end of red snapper season, like September. August, September seems to be the peak for our area.
Full moon, August, September, October, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. I couldn't explain why that is, but generally 9 out of 10 times if we bring in a Cabera, it's one of those months.
Yeah.
It's August, September, October, around the moons for sure. And how to target them, I mean, most frequently they're caught by people mangrove fishing, hook a mangrove, start reeling it up, and then a Cubera eats it.
Yeah, or a vermilion or whatever you hooked, yeah.
And most of the time they get thought to be a shark, and people try to break them off all the time. Mm-hmm. I remember that was Sam My cousin Sam was out there with Will, and he caught a 96-pound cubera. And Will's like, "You got a shark, bro. Break it off."
Yeah, I gave him my rod because he forgot a rod or something. I cave him my rod, and he caught a giant cubera on it first spot. I was proud of him.
Proud, jealous. It's all the same, right? So how to target a cubera? I mean, people use live lobster form down in the Keys. I personally have tried that once. But my dad was with me, and, Capt Mark, man, we dropped that lobster down. It was on the bottom for maybe 2 minutes, and he was like, reel that up.
They're not going to bite that.
And we ate it.
Yeah. Somebody else is going to bite it.
Yeah. So, personally, I don't know of anybody who uses live lobster to target cubera in our area. I know spear fishermen get them a lot in our area.
Yeah, they're easier. They're smart fish, and they bite right when they know the ones we catch. We'll either catch them right at sundown, right at sunup, or right at a full moon straight up. And they bite it. They're smart fish.
And we've caught some even Nearshore. We've seen one on our 12-hour night trip before. It wasn't very big, but we've seen them. We've seen those like 15, 20 pounders before. We've seen those 100 pounders before. You never know. But as far as like chance to get them, your best chance is August, September, and October, but your likelihood is still pretty low. Like Will said, they're just mean. They get broke off more, and same with like a black grouper. People are like, "Oh, how do I catch a big black grouper?" You probably won't unless you get really lucky.
Yes.
Like I was talking to a captain down way south Florida, like around the Keys, Marco Island area, and he said he had just landed. He was all proud, sent me a photo of a big, like 50-pound black he caught, true black, and he was fishing on the bottom. Customer down the rail from him got tangled up or had a backlash or something, so he put his rod in the rod holder, cranked it up 15, 20 cranks, and went to help the guy next to him, and turned around, and his rod's doubled over in the rod holder. He went over there and grabbed it and started fighting the fish, and it was a big, true black.
Nice.
But the only reason he landed it is because he had reeled up 20 cranks off the bottom.
The big one I caught was up off the bottom.
Same thing, right?
Yeah.
You were rod holder fishing.
Yeah, I was rod holder fishing. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Now, you used to be famous for that.
Oh yeah.
What about that big gag you caught? You had like a 60-pound gag.
My biggest I had to throw back, but no, I had a couple big ones last year, like a 28 and a 30.
You had one that was like huge, man. Wasn't it like over 40?
Quite possibly.
I remember it was either 46 or 62, somewhere in that time frame. It was a huge fish because you were holding it up and it was like up to your neck and tail was still on the deck. It was a monster fish, and you're not that short of a guy.
No,
you made that fish look big. It was crazy. All right, so before we get into more questions, let's do our first giveaway of the night. We've got a 5-hour half day for 2 to give away, a 10-hour all day for 2, and a 39-hour to give away as well. Let's do our 10-hour all day first. So this is a 10-hour all day for 2 guests, 1 lucky winner. Let's see who the winner is. Congrats, Nick Nieves. Awesome, man, from Valrica, Florida. 10-hour all day for 2 guests. The Skyway Fishing Club man himself. What trolling lure is your favorite from Blackfin Tuna? So we just talked about that, already nailed that in the head. Lip diving plug, either Nomad DTX or the Apollo X-Wrap. What is Captain Will's most memorable trip? That's a good question.
That's a tough question too.
Yeah, because you've had a lot of memories.
Yeah, I've got
both
some
ways.
Cool fish, and
you got airlifted.
Oh,
once?
I've been airlifted off the boat. That's probably the most memorable.
For me too.
I've had some really
worried
good
about you.
fishing trips too.
Do the airlift story first, because now people are going to wonder.
Oh yeah, they are. So I had heartburn. I used to dip, and I would eat a ton of spicy food, and I just had heartburn forever. And I eventually had torn esophagus from having heartburn, and it happened on the boat, and I was throwing up blood
like crazy,
and I thought I was dying, and I probably was. But so we've got a Leo there, one of the regulars, and he's telling me it's my kidneys and then whatever it may be, other things that I'm really worried about, and so we called the Coast Guard, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna bring him off the boat," and I was shaky. I was hurting at that time, and I'll just get me out of here. And I rode in a Black Hawk.
Oh, nice.
From 82 miles out to Tampa.
That's wild, man.
And as soon as I got there, they're like, all right, you're okay. And I was like, great. But when you're on the boat and you're that far out and you're throwing up blood, you're not okay. Not okay, no.
So did they take you off a basket off the bow like they happened?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm like watching the boat going, but I don't even care about that at that point in time. I'm like, get me
So you weren't even nervous really coming up in the basket?
No, at that time, you're like, just
so sick. You just want to do anything to get into the hospital.
And then they're they make you feel good when you get there. So I was just like, oh, thank you. I made it. Thought that was the end.
Oh man. So that's the most memorable. What would be your most memorable fishing wise?
We had the groupers used to be crazy out there a few times, and they still get that way. We just can't keep them half the time,
Yeah.
And but I had a time where you could keep 10 gag grouper per person, and I had a trip where I limited out on gag grouper, amberjacks, mangroves, and had a giant kingfish and a 60-pound cobia.
Dang.
That was my best fishing trip.
Limited out on mangroves, amberjack, gags, had a huge kingfish and a 60-pound cobia.
Yeah, and 2 jacks.
Oh my gosh. That is epic.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fish, man.
That was a trip.
Yeah. And that was a fishing trip you just went on for fun?
Yeah, that was we had done really well, and I wasn't working the next trip. Mm-hmm. And I think Captain Chris Wilkie came out with me even on that trip. Yeah, he was there. And for some reason we didn't have pinfish, but I had set out a pinfish trap, so I had a whole live well of pinfish.
Oh yeah.
And they were
chewing.
Yeah.
You were back out there for them. That's funny. That's very cool, man. All right, let's see what other questions do we have. Has anybody Ooh, that's a good one. All right, so we talked about your most memorable trip from getting airlifted, your most memorable fishing trip. What is the worst storm experience you've had?
We have been in some storms for sure. We've had
don't scare people. Narrow it down
years ago. But so we've been in a
Will's
whiteout.
Like, which time, Dylan?
We've been in a whiteout where a tropical depression of some kind formed on top of us. We're in a total whiteout for hours, and we've had a couple of rogue waves out there.
Yeah.
And where I was pulling the anchor back when I was a deckhand, and it's at night, and it's normal seas, and then you get hit up to here. Yeah. Over the bow up to here, the whole boat, basically the whole deck underwater for a second.
Yeah,
and I've gotten hit with a couple of those.
Yeah, I remember I was working with you as a deckhand way back in the day, and that happened to us while we were scrubbing the deck.
Yeah,
and you went down one side of the boat, I went down one side of the boat. We met at the back, both in like 2 feet of water, and hit the back rail of the boat. It was crazy. Those are always weird ones.
Yeah, there's some rogue waves occasionally.
Yeah, so you always got to keep an eye out for sure and be safe and be conscientious. What about, most memorable fishing, what's the coolest thing that you've seen out there? Because to me, out there on the 39 hour, especially at night, there's no light pollution. You see so many stars. You see comets, asteroids.
Oh, yeah, we see
satellites like crazy.
Things we call orbs that come out of the water, and we don't even know what they are. But
you've got a whole list of UFOs you've seen.
Yeah, oh yeah, but we've seen a comet that just is sitting there, and it's like half the sky, and it's just barely even moving. Yeah, like they wake me up, Will, you got to come out and see this, and everybody's already out there looking at it. I was like the last guy to get out there, and it's just burning through the sky.
That's cool.
We've seen a couple of the shuttle takeoffs, and you're not sure what it is. I thought the sun was coming up. I'm like, we got the sun coming up off the bow, and I look at my clock, and it's like 4:45.
It's not sunrise yet. What about the sea snakes? That's always cool.
Oh, yeah, those are cool. I've seen a school of mahi-mahi out there, like miles of them, with a mile of dolphins chasing them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. Mm-hmm. And then the bioluminescence, that's always interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's cool stuff, too. Summertime, usually. You'll see glowing dolphins out there in the summertime. I don't know if I think it's full moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, summertime,
full moon, new moon.
Or new moon, yeah.
New moon a lot of times, too. But, yeah, the bioluminescence is always really interesting. My favorite was the sea snakes. I remember one trip, we were in some area or something. I think it was a new moon, and there was no lights around except for the floodlights of the deck.
Yeah.
And dude, we just they were everywhere, and they were crawling up people's fishing lines. We had to just pull the anchor and leave.
Sea snakes
It
everywhere.
was wild.
Yeah, they're wild.
It was like one of the plagues in the Bible. It was crazy.
And we had that mako last year. Several 100-pound mako almost jumping the boat.
Yeah, right on the bow. That was wild. No good footage of that.
No.
We've had makos along the side of the boat more than once.
Yeah.
Still don't have a single photo of it, unfortunately. Also, great white. You've seen a great white out there. Yeah. And what's interesting to me is most recently we had a whale, 2 big whales spotted. But that was on a 10-hour, not on a 39.
Yeah, that was wild.
Weird.
Big whales, too,
Yeah,
right?
they were huge.
Yeah.
They were bigger than the friendly.
That's crazy. Those are some of the biggest ones, I think.
Yeah. I
could be wrong.
I don't remember. Whales.
Right. Well, I think, yeah.
No, it wasn't the right whale.
No, somebody saw
Those
right
things
whales,
are
too.
extinct.
Not a right whale. I'm not.
We're not whale people.
Oh, yeah, sorry, guys. Somebody saw some whales.
Yeah. I know my buddies over in the Galveston party boat fleet, Galveston party boats, they saw a pack of killer whales.
Really?
Like 4 of them. And they had footage of their cool stuff.
I've heard killer whales live in the Gulf.
Oh, yeah. Dad said that they used to see them quite a bit. Like back in the day. Yeah, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 90s. They saw whales, or killer whales, quite a bit.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Not so much anymore, but who knows. If we're going out on a 39-hour trip targeting mangroves and red grouper, how many live pinfish would you take?
And a lot of times you're not going to use them all, but I would say at least 3 dozen.
A person.
Yeah, 3 dozen a person.
And that's the thing. And people ask me that a lot. Like, how many shrimp do I need on a 10-hour? How many pinfish do I need on a 39-hour? Really, it's a personal choice, right? Because technically, you don't need pinfish. You can go out there with 0. But sometimes they're biting the pinfish.
Yeah.
And if they're biting the pinfish and you don't have them, it's frustrating. And especially if you're paying a lot of money, you're going out on this fishing trip, you might as well spend a couple extra dollars and have some extra options, right? Because you don't want to be the guy out there when they're biting pinfish and you don't have pinfish.
No, what happens, the main one is the big mangroves will be biting, and that guy's getting them on pinfish, and it's hard to get that big one to bite a threadfin. Sometimes he will, but a lot of times
and sometimes they're not keyed in on the pinfish. Sometimes they want dead bait.
Yep.
So you don't know when you're booking your trip. You don't know even at the dock before leaving. So it's hard to say, like, hey, you need a dozen, we'll do you, or 2 dozen. It's always better to be prepared and not need them, right? So it's hard to answer that question. But on average, just general rule of thumb, any time of year, no matter the season, we always say about 3 dozen per person is a good idea on that 39-hour for pinfish.
And you may use a dozen of them, and you may not catch anything on any of them. But
you may not use one of them.
Yeah, but you had them.
Yes.
And you may, in some trips, you're going to use every one and be asking the guy next to you for some.
Yeah, exactly. What about other baits? So people ask me a lot, like, hey, do I need cigar minnows? Do I need sardines? Because we provide threadfins and squid on the boat. But, I mean, it comes back to the whole pinfish thing. It's like, you don't need cigar minnows. You don't need threadfins. But sometimes, or you don't need cigar minnows or sardines or goggle eyes. But sometimes having that bait that's a little different than everybody else's sets it off.
Absolutely. And in some areas, like the Keys, you need to bring bait with you, or they're not going to bite or they're not going to catch fish. But this isn't one of those places where you can catch just as much fish on the boat bait as you can with any bait that you brought. But there is that time where they wanted a cigar minnow on that spot, or a Boston mackerel for a red snapper.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a lot of times what you said earlier, at the very beginning of a spot when all the baits are coming down. If you got that one bait that looks a little different, that's a little bigger, or a little bit more flashy, or a little bit different, sometimes it'll stand out and that big aggressive fish will catch it or key into it. And then towards the end of a spot too, they've been seeing threadfin after threadfin after threadfin.
Throw something else
and
down
you
there.
drop down that SPJ, or you drop down that big old cigar minnow, and it's like, I was full, but I'm gonna take that one. You know, it's like when you're at the buffet and they bring out a new tray of crab legs. You're like, I was full, but
Take one more. The way Big John explains it is, it's a diner down there. It's not. He has to choose. He's getting to choose one. Yeah. So you might as well have the best looking one down there. It's not. He's not going to go eat all of those. He wants to maybe, but he's going to choose the best looking one.
That's a good way of putting it too. I like that. Can you drift for gags when the season opens, like for red grouper? I'm gonna say no.
Doubtfully, yeah. We did catch a few.
Yeah,
but
there's a chance for it.
If it's slick calm.
If it's slick calm, and then if you in a really cracky area, you got a good chunk of hard bottom. But generally, gags are very keyed into their structure, right? Spear fishermen will actually pre-fish gags for spearfishing tournaments. Like they'll dive down there and see a hole a gag sitting in, and they'll come back a couple weeks later, and that gag will be still in that hole.
Oh yeah.
So gags don't necessarily leave their holes very much. Red grouper, they're scavengers. They spread out over an area of flat hard bottom or shell. They'll even go into the sand sometimes at night. So red grouper spread out, so you can drift for red grouper, show your bait to more fish, and be more successful. It's kind of like drifting the flats for trout. You show your bait to more trout, you're going to catch more trout. But if you're fishing for like redfish or something like that, they're going to be keyed into that structure, that oyster bar, that mangrove shoreline. So you're going to want to fish that structure. And it's same with gags. I think you can drift for the trout or the red grouper, but if you want to catch that redfish or that gag, you got to fish that structure.
Yeah. And you might get a random, but you wouldn't get the numbers. You know, you wouldn't catch them. You wouldn't keep getting those ones off that spot.
Yeah, and you definitely would get probably better luck landing them if you hooked him drifting.
Yeah,
because he's away from his hole.
You just hold on.
And that's like that big gag Joe Carney caught on the octopus. That was like a 40-something pound gag.
Yeah,
42-pounder.
That was a nice.
And I think he caught it on
maybe,
48.
It
was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. Maybe it was like 46 or 48. But he caught it, and the boat was swinging real bad, you told me. And we had swung real bad away from the spot, and he caught it on the swing. And that's probably why he was able to land it, because I think he had like 40-pound test.
Yeah, swimming around out there.
Yeah, he's that swing, that octopus came up in the water column, and he smacked it, and the boat's momentum, inertia, pulled that gag away from his hole.
Yeah, where you don't necessarily have to reel. Now you're just holding on.
Yeah, and he had nowhere to go. He wasn't going to break him off in the sand.
No.
Sometimes you get a little lucky. A little bit of luck will help you for sure. This one's a good one. Best bait and strategy for a scamp.
That is a good one. A lot of times it is a jig.
Yeah, a jig. I was talking to, I had Tim Duncan on the radio show with me yesterday. It was pretty cool. And picking his brain on jigs. And he said for scamp, the black and golds work really well, kind of early morning, first part of the day, during the day, like the pinks, the greens, the blues. Gold and red was his favorite for red grouper, but for scamps, the pinks, the greens, the blues. And I've heard that for gag grouper as well, pink, green, blue.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're mixed with like silver or glow. But scamp, they love a jig. Scamp, I think a lot of times those like medium-sized pinfish.
Yep.
Like 60-pound test, 50, 60-pound test, smaller hook, like 5-6-aught hook, like a medium-sized pin.
Medium squid.
Oh, squid shrimp.
A medium whole squid.
Oh.
No, not a big one, but a smaller whole squid.
Like a 5-inch squid.
Yeah.
Whole squid.
Like grocery store size. Yeah.
Okay. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, they work too.
Yeah, he was talking about squid colored jigs, like the pinks and the pinkish reds.
Oh, yeah.
He likes those colored jigs a lot for the scamp, too. I think as well, a lot of times I've personally caught my biggest scamp and scamp more regularly just fishing for mangroves with cut threadfin.
Yeah, they bite a threadfin. They bite a pinfish. They bite.
They bite a shrimp, too.
Yeah,
a big old select shrimp.
But the thing, if we're in deep water and they're not biting good and you want to catch one, I like a small pinfish.
Small pinfish.
And keep it still down there, too. And I mean, not necessarily small, but not a hand-sized pinfish.
Yeah.
Big enough where you get it in his mouth.
Smaller than a gag grouper bait.
Yes.
I got you. A mangrove-sized pinfish.
Yes, absolutely.
Could the fish have moved in closer because of the storms changing the bottom structure? What if you catch red grouper inside 20 fathoms and go past 20 fathoms? So What we do on the 20 fathom thing is a lot of times on your 39 hour, you're fishing beyond 20 fathoms to start at night for the mangroves and stuff.
Yep.
And then you come in during the day when we're targeting the red grouper, because generally we're catching them more during the day. So we target the red grouper once we're inside 20 fathoms where it's open. And then once you have a red grouper on your boat, you cannot go past the line again. So that's how that works. And then could the fish have moved in closer because of the storms changing bottom structure? Storms will change bottom structure, but it's more pronounced and more apparent inshore. Shallower water gets stirred up more and the sand moves around more. So inside 100 foot, the bottom structure changed a lot. And that's where the fish are. So I would argue that line of thinking makes sense, but it wouldn't necessarily be the case because the area that got changed the most is where the mangroves are hanging out.
Yeah.
Deeper water, it's a lot harder to stir that up and change the bottom.
Oh, yeah, it would take giant waves.
What's crazy, though, is I was talking to a buddy, Captain Ed Walker, and he's got a sailboat wreck that he loves. I think it was the Gulf side. Well, regardless, it was the Gulf side or Atlantic side of the Keys. And it's in 300 foot of water. And he said that thing is gone. I forget what storm it was, but it was one of the recent hurricanes came by, and it was probably Milton because it was pretty strong when it passed the Keys, but it's gone.
That's crazy.
300 foot. Nuts. So it can affect the bottom even in deep water. What was Captain Will's most memorable client experience? Probably probably the one we can't talk about.
Yeah, one of those, yeah.
Where the FBI and ATF and Homeland Security were involved.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I was at home in my apartment, and you guys hadn't even called on the sat phone yet, and a guy in an FBI windbreaker was knocking on my door.
Oh, yeah.
That was nuts. But long story short, it was a crazy experience, and everybody was safe, thankfully. Yeah. I would say that's probably the most memorable.
That is a very good one. I was going to say something, come up with not as good of a story.
Which one was yours?
I don't know. I was going to say my wife maybe, or
your wife going fishing with you.
Yeah, something.
Or having to do with Roger or Slippy.
Yeah,
All right, public service announcement. Please stay away from the Keys for the next week or so. Yeah, definitely nasty down there. They have a huge fire going on in Key Largo area, and US 1 was pretty much shut down.
Really?
So Melissa was down there with her daughter. Melissa works in our office. Her daughter came down from up north, and they went to the Keys, and they got stuck there. They tried to drive out of the Keys, and they couldn't leave because US 1 was shut down. So Melissa took a flight out, and her daughter hopped on the ferry and took the ferry out. But, yeah, they weren't letting people drive out of the Keys.
Dang, I did not know that.
Yeah, pretty wild stuff. Yeah, the ferry is cool. I like it a lot. Tell Captain Will I will not bring him any more spicy jerky from Buc-ee's. Yeah, you used to be a spicy food fiend.
And man. I still do eat spicy food. But it was the dipping and chewing tobacco. All of it together.
Yeah.
Was
and you were it was also orange juice, bro.
Oh yeah,
you were
drank
drinking
orange
gallons
juice.
of orange juice.
Yeah, I don't know
while
why.
dipping, while eating spicy food.
I don't always make the best diet choices.
Yeah. The 39 hour is not conducive to that.
No, yeah. You're like, I'm going to want some of that out there. Okay, I'm going to need something sweet. No, I need some spicy stuff. Lots of dip.
Yeah, right. Can you use braid on the trips? My rule of thumb is always if you're willing to use a top shot, generally about a third of your line in the water. So if you're fishing on a 39 hour and 120 foot of water, you're going to want about 30, 40 feet of mono or fluoro on top of your braid. But most of the time, you don't need braid. I mean, where we're fishing.
No, it has a couple of advantages just in real deep water sometimes, but a lot of times you're getting tangled up so much that it's not an advantage. And with the jigs, it does have an advantage.
Yeah, you got to use it if you're slow pitch jigging for sure. Flatline fishing, if you're going to be knocker rig fishing, you need it. But for bottom fishing with bait fish, like if it's your first, second, third, first time, first year, 2 years fishing, stick to mono. There's no reason to go to braid because then you have to do the line-to-line knot. You have to do the top shot. It just complicates things. If you're buying your first offshore reel, don't let the bait shop talk you into braid. Just go mono. But if you're like the advanced level course and you're an experienced fisherman, you can use braid as long as you're using a top shot.
Yeah.
But it can cause problems.
And my biggest thing with braid is I lose big fish on braid. I feel like that I would have caught on mono. I don't know why, but if I lose one, I'm like, what's a braid?
Most of your big reels are all spooled mono.
Yeah, anything if I've got over 80 pound, it'll be mono.
Yeah.
80 or bigger, yeah.
The only time I'm using braid is like mangrove snapper fishing, deep water fishing, jig fishing, flatline fishing. But yeah, my big 9/0 spooled with mono.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it that way. Let's see. What else do we got here? When you get a chance to drift for red grouper, do you have to be careful not to let your sinker hit the bottom, create that puff of sand you always talk about, or are you dragging it? You're not dragging it. So what I like to do is if you drop down to bottom, and it's almost the opposite of anchor fishing. I drop down to bottom, and then I keep my rod tip really high and keep contact with the bottom. And then as you drift, as the boat moves, I slowly lower my rod tip. And then once my rod tip gets to the water, then I just put it in free spool and lift my rod tip back up. And if the drift's not really fast, you could do that a couple times before you have to reel up and reset. The other method is you just let your rod tip get real low, and then you lift your rod tip all the way to the sky, and then slowly set it back down, and you're hopping your lead along the bottom. Yep. Or if you're doing what I'm doing, where you're lifting your rod tip to the sky, it gets low, and you let line out, you're keeping your lead in the same spot as the boat moves, and you're fishing that one spot. So those are the two options in my mind, is you can hop your lead and cover area, or you could just drop it and let it sit for a while. And then once your line gets too far away, reel up and reset. So you're still hopping your lead, you're just fishing it a little longer, a little bit more still. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I'm doing the hopping thing where I drop it down, I'm feeling for a bite for a minute, or I'm letting it go for a free spool for a minute, hold it, see if I get a bite, let it go one more time, no bite, all right, he's not in that area. Now pull it a few feet, put it back down, repeat that process.
So you're kind of hopping.
Yeah, definitely hopping.
But when you hit bottom, you keep it there for a minute, and you just keep your reel in free spool.
Yeah, I don't just hit bottom, put it in gear, and stand there,
Yeah.
I'll leave it, feel for it, and no, I'm not getting a bite, okay, bring it a few feet over, drop it, do the same thing. And
yeah. You definitely don't want to drag it. Because if you're dragging it, not only are you creating that puff of sand, but you're just going to hook bottom. And then eventually, as the boat moves, your lead's going to pick up off the bottom, and you're not going to be fishing on the bottom anymore. So you want to do one of those two methods. And it involves letting a lot of line out.
And then reeling up and dropping down a lot, too.
Yeah. It can be frustrating if you're drifting fast. You got to reel up and reset quite a bit, quite often.
Well, yeah.
Because you want to be more vertical. Once you start to stretch that line out and the line gets further from the boat, it's harder to feel the bite, too. It gets real difficult. What is the best way to hook a live pinfish? Will's done a video on this. It's on our YouTube channel. It's on our fishing tips and tricks page. Remember, if you go to hubbardsmarina.com, I'm going to bring them over, Josh. If you go to hubbardsmarina.com, you hit fishing trips, scroll down to fishing video links, and then hit fishing tips and tricks page. There's Nearshore and Offshore general tips. There's how to catch a pinfish. That's a Salt Strong video. Rigging tips. And there's general tips. We got so many tips on here. It's hard to even find what I'm looking for. But there's a video in here where you were going over how to tie or how to hook a pinfish. It was on the dock. We did it recently.
Yeah, I remember. There it is right there. It's only 3 rows down, yeah.
Where is it?
How to catch a pinfish. Nope, that's not it.
That's what I thought it was too when I was looking at it. Maybe it's not on here yet. But it will be after the show because Josh will pick it up off our YouTube channel. But yeah, we've been putting out so much YouTube content recently, it's hard to keep up with, to be honest. And we definitely got some new YouTube channel content for sure. And we've been doing more, too. Those little chats are pretty cool.
They are cool, yeah.
Yeah, we got more coming. All right, let's do our another giveaway. We did our 10-hour all-day giveaway. Let's do our 5-hour half-day for 2 guests. 5-hour half-day for 2 guests. 1 lucky winner. 5-hour goes to Willie Munoz and his family. They're going to definitely use that 5-hour before a 39-hour.
Oh, yeah.
Him and his son getting some bait.
Nice.
That's awesome. All right, so we did our 5-hour, 10-hour giveaway. The next giveaway is that 39-hour fishing trip to fish with this guy on a 39-hour trip. But let's do a couple more questions here. You recommended once going on the 5 hour before the 39 hour and catching bait. Is that better to just? Is it better to do that or just get 3 dozen pinfish? I think both. But you don't need 3 dozen pinfish if you go on the half day trip.
No.
Probably only want maybe a dozen. Because what you catch on the half-day trip is too big for a mangrove, right?
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the people next to you are catching little fish, too, on the half-day, and they're not keeping them. They're throwing them right back, and you're like, oh, I'll take that, and they'll give them to you, and you take it.
Yeah, if you go out on the half-day before your 39-hour, let the crew know that you're going on the 39-hour, and the crew will help you, too, because there's other people will catch, like, a pigfish, and we're not going to string that to eat. We're going to release it. But if they know someone on the boat who's going on the 39-hour, the crew will keep it and put it in a live well for you. So it's kind of a team effort to catch bait for that person on the 39-hour. But most of the bait you're going to catch is big. So if you still want those mangrove baits, you still got to get a dozen pinfish.
Absolutely.
For sure. Let's see. How deep can you catch fish before you're releasing dead fish to barotrauma? Literally, they haven't discovered it yet. There was a study done on canary rockfish. They do tag recapture studies, so they tag fish, release them, and then when the tag is recaptured, it gets called in. And this tag recapture study on canary rockfish out of California, 684 feet of water is canary rockfish. And canary rockfish is a small fish. It almost looks like a grouper, but it's very small. 684 feet this canary rockfish was caught, reeled all the way up, tagged, and then sent down on the descender device. It was caught like 6 months later, alive, and it had grown. And in our area, a Kitty Mitchell, or spotted hind, was caught in 484 foot by Captain Steve Pappin on an FWC tagging study trip.
Really?
They caught it, tagged it, released it with the descending device. It was caught like 6 or 8 months later, over 800 foot on a commercial long line, and was brought to the dock and had the tag in it and everything.
Man.
And it had grown and traveled like, I think, 6 miles. So, yeah.
It's working.
Those descending devices work. So you can catch fish and release them even in really deep water, even in over 400 foot. So it works.
And a lot of times one that would not make it was one that got hooked in the throat. Or something, you know, a fish hooked in the lip and descended right.
It'll work.
Yeah.
Do you ever do magnet fishing? We have when knives have gone in the water or other assorted things. I magnet fished for a while when I lost my wedding ring on the dock.
Yeah, you did.
Didn't work. Will, you've done magnet fishing before.
I've seen them doing it. They've done it on the half day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen them doing it on the half day.
Huh.
Drifting on the half day. And that's
hilarious.
not a bad place to do it. There's shipwrecks out there.
You never know.
Yeah.
Have we done magnet fishing, like, specifically? No, but
I've seen them do it on a half day.
you could do it.
Yeah.
You could pull it off. All right. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Well, don't have a question. Josh is going to pull one up here. If you're going out on a 39-hour trip this summer, whatever, this year, what's some of the tips you would give to someone going out on a 39-hour trip as someone who's never done one before? Like, because I feel like so many people have so many questions, and that first trip has such a big learning curve. And it's so interesting to me to see someone who's like tried a 5-hour trip, then they did a couple 10-hour trips, then they did a 12-hour, and they're like, all right, I'm going to do my first 39-hour. They've got a bunch of questions, they watch a lot of videos, and then they get out there on the 39-hour. And when they come back, they have this look in their eyes like, whoa, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to do that again, but I just learned a lot of things.
I'm going to do everything different next time.
Yeah, right? Right? And it's interesting because no matter the preparation you do, you learn things on that trip. And no matter how much content we try to provide, we just can't seem to fully relay the message.
Yeah, it is. The first trip is definitely a learning curve. I remember my first trip going out there. And I was probably 18, maybe younger.
Yeah. Well, you came down fishing before you started working?
Yeah. And I was Captain Matt's next door neighbor.
Ah, yeah, I remember that story now. So he brought you down fishing.
Yeah, and then I was the third mate. and then
Just started hanging
mate,
out.
Yeah.
And then the first mate, now you run the boat.
Yeah. So where were we? Oh, overnight. So bedding, of course, you want to have something to be comfortable to sleep in, a pillow, and a lot of people their first trip they're like, oh, I need big rods.
Yeah,
that's one mistake I see people make, and you need a lot of times you need a lighter rod too. If we're catching mangroves at night and you've got only a 60 or 80 pound class rod, and they're picky mangroves or they're finicky, then you're gonna
be out of luck,
and you're not gonna be feeling a bite a lot of times too with a heavy rod. I see that. I see people come out with too heavy of a stick to fish with mangroves at night.
Yeah.
Fish for mangroves at night, yes.
So you need a 20, 30, 40 pound class rod, like that 20 to 40 or 30 to 50 class rod to fish for mangroves, 40, 50 pound main line. Mm-hmm. You need that middle of the road, like 60 pounder with like 35, 40 pounds of drag, maybe 30 to 80, 50 to 80. And then you need that big dog, especially during gag season or amberjack season. That's rated 80, 100 pounds with 100 pound, 80 or 100 pound main line.
Yeah, you want a big one, and really you're not fishing with it a lot, but if you drop your other one down and you get broke off and you're like, oh, I'll try it again, drop out and lose another fish, and now you're like, all right,
take out the big dog.
I need a big rod. And then if you don't have that, that's like just like you're not having a light rod, Mm-hmm. You got nothing for it.
You want a couple weapons.
Yes.
And bedding is a great example. Like, to me, bedding means I like bringing a sleeping bag and a little sheet because I'm claustrophobic. If I climb in a sleeping bag, I won't sleep. So I lay the sleeping bag down and then I sleep on top of it with a little light blanket. So bring what you're comfortable with sleeping. That's a learning curve in and of itself.
Yep.
But I always recommend to people too, it can be loud sometimes.
Earplugs.
Yeah.
I have earplugs in my bag all the time.
Yeah, earplugs are always a good idea because inevitably there's somebody drinking a beer in the back who's having a good time. They're excited to go fishing too, and they can't sleep. So you hear someone talking.
Or ear pods.
Yeah, ear pods, earplugs, whatever. And then obviously you've got generators, engines running. So something to block out the noise. And then if you're like me, I don't like lights on, and we have to have some lights on. Mm-hmm. So something to cover your eyes is a good idea.
That is, I use a shirt.
Yeah, you use a shirt, just keep it old school.
I was watching a show, and the guy's like, man, I wish I had something to cover. He was camping, and it was in the daylight, and I was like, why aren't you using a shirt?
Works great.
Yeah.
But you have to bring extra shirts for that, because you don't want to put your fishy, smelly shirt over your eyes, too. No. So Will's got bountiful clothing, because he kind of moves into the wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. So in your case, you can bring something else. But toiletries, too.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people forget their toiletries. You want to brush your teeth. We all would hope that you brush your teeth. Don't forget your deodorant either. We all want you to remember that.
Maybe a snack that you would forget about normally, but something that you would not have on the boat. You're going to be hungry. You're going to be thirsty.
For me, it's like some sort of electrolyte drink, whether it's a Gatorade or coconut water or pickle juice, and not glass jar pickle juice, but pickle juice, electrolyte drinks, and then protein bars is the other one, because we have the snacks and with the candy bars and the granola bars and the chips, but some good quality there. And the other thing for me too is extra socks. People forget that.
I bring 3 pairs of extra. 4 pairs of socks.
I go crazy with the socks. I'm putting 6 in my bag because I don't like my socks being wet. And you're wearing fishing boots, so most of the time your socks don't get wet. But I got sweaty feet, dog. I'm going to be changing my socks every now and again.
And I'm not planning on taking a shower generally, but I do from time to time if I get really nasty. But I always bring a towel anyway.
Yeah. You want to bring a towel and then flip-flops so you can take a shower. And then what's some other weird stuff?
I would think, maybe a flashlight of some kind.
Yeah, that's a good idea. A flashlight or a little headlamp, because you don't want to be digging in your bag and waking everybody else up. So something that you can just targetedly look in your bag at night if you need to. What's some other weird stuff?
In my bed, I have 4 inches of memory foam.
Yeah, I've been seeing people bring more memory foam too.
It's so big though. I nobody and a customer couldn't bring. Mine is like this big.
Yeah,
in my bed.
Yours is oversized. But it's very comfortable for Captain Will here. He's got to sleep nice, right?
I got to sleep on the way out.
Yeah. Dramamine, someone mentioned. Dramamine's a good idea, but the thing about Dramamine is it only lasts a couple hours. So you got to take it before the trip, get it in your bloodstream, and then you got to keep taking it through the trip. I've seen that happen where someone takes it and they're, oh yeah, on the way out, and then like 10 hours later they're like, oh, I'm seasick, because you got to keep taking it.
They don't have the 39-hour Dramamine.
Yeah, they don't make that one yet. Nothing yet. Yeah, for sure. How many fishing rods is recommended for a 39-hour trip? Me personally, I'm going to bring 3, maybe 4. 5 is pushing it. I wouldn't say. I mean, how many are you going to bring? 2?
Yeah, I would say this time of year 2 to 4, but yes. And if you're on the stern, you could bring a rod for a flat line.
Yeah.
Throw a flatline rod in there.
If the conditions allow.
And really, we aren't flatlining a whole lot, right? It really hasn't been time. It's almost time. But
it's getting there.
It's a lot of work, especially when the fish are biting. If you're catching other fish, you don't have time to put out a flat line and wait for a bite.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
Let's see. Crystallized or candy ginger works well for fishing or seasickness. Yeah. Tammy used to have ginger pills.
Yeah, she does that. Yeah.
Yeah, the ginger pills. We're skipping that one. Do fish do magic shows for each other underwater? I don't know where that one came from.
That sounds like Scraps.
It does sound like a Scraps question. He asks questions on the radio show sometimes. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Oh, that's funny.
He called me the other day.
What's the best? I got to recover. What's the best time of year and best day trip to keep keeper, grouper, and also hogfish? So remember, red grouper are open the first half of the year. Scamp grouper are open all year. Strawberry grouper are open all year. Gags are going to be open for like maybe 10 days this year. But to catch keeper, grouper, and hogfish in the same trip is pretty rare because most of the time we're targeting hogfish in shallower water, like 35, 40, 50 foot.
And you used to catch red grouper in there too with them, but not as much anymore.
Yeah, most of the time the red grouper are a little deeper, 70, 80, 90 foot. They start up to about 250 foot. Now, we do catch hogfish occasionally on the 39s. That's where we get the big dog hogfish, the 18, 19, 20-pound hogfish. I think our biggest is like 24 pounds, 26
21,
pounds.
I think, yeah.
Something like that.
Crazy big one.
Huge hogfish.
They look crazy when they're that big.
Yeah.
Their head's like that long.
They look silly.
Yeah.
Sillier. It's wild. And a lot of times on the 39-hour, those big dog hogfish come on the small pinfish.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting.
I think our biggest one was on a pinfish.
Yeah. Big, or like a small to medium pinfish at sunrise, it seems like.
And sunrise. They only bite at sunrise and sundown out there.
It's weird.
And we did the big one we call, or one of the big ones we caught on the same trip, we caught a cubero. Like everything was biting.
Yeah. Wild day. So someone asked, are we still good that 4 out of 5 fish are legal the first week in September? So amberjack are supposed to be open September and October. I just heard preliminary numbers on amberjack last year. They said we caught, unfortunately for amberjack, we're still managed under MRIP FES. And they're saying that 850,000 pounds of amberjack were landed last year in September and October. Half the fleet was closed because we got hit by 2 category major hurricanes. So
yeah.
The people that fish all year round in Central and Southwest Florida were out of business basically for half that time. But
we got 1,000 pounds on them.
Yeah.
1,000 of that 850,000.
Yeah, right. So long story short, amberjack season is going to get shorter, but it's going to open September 1st. So yes, gags are also going to be short. They're going to open September 1st. They're going to be open 6-10 days. Red grouper will be closed then, but amberjack will be open, gags will be open, red snapper should probably still be open, and triggerfish will be open. So out of the 5 fish that have seasons, 4 of them should be open for at least the first 6 to 10 days of September.
Nice.
So it'll be pretty interesting.
We had a real good trip last year when the jacks were open and the red snappers.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
And this year, I mean, I'm thinking red snapper are going to go pretty late in September. They closed last year August 27th, and there was 30% of the quota left on the table. They opened that season again for 40 days. I think it was mid-November it opened, and it stayed open till the end of the year. You know how many additional pounds were caught? it was like minuscule. I forget off
They
the
aren't
top
out
of my
there
head,
that time of year.
but it was like 20 or 30,000 pounds.
Yeah, they're not as thick in the winter.
Well, also there's the only people fishing that time of year is us.
Yeah.
Because from Tarpon Springs all the way to Brownsville, Texas, all those boats are done. They don't even fish.
Oh, yeah.
Like my buddy up in Destin, they put their boat away after the end of October, November, December, January, February. The boat's out of the water.
Really?
Yeah, they pull it out of the water to just shut down the business.
Crazy.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's going to go pretty late.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Speaking of going late, we're going pretty late. Let's do our 39-hour trip giveaway and wrap this thing up so Captain Will can go home. I know you got to be tired.
I'm getting there. This is my day where I'm like not quite right on Sundays. And I jigged yesterday. I don't jig very much, but I had a very successful day of jig fishing yesterday.
So you're tired.
And I woke up this morning like, oh.
Yeah, he just got back in from a 39-hour trip this morning, so I appreciate you coming on the show. So I don't want to hold you any longer, but I do appreciate you coming.
Hey, no problem, man. I had a great time.
So remember, every Sunday night, 7:30 p.m., our live stream show, we give away free trips, answer your questions. Tonight was a little different because we were chatting with Will, but it was definitely a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Remember, every Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Tell your friends. We'll hopefully see you again next week. And then also, don't forget, Tuesday, April 15th, 7 to 9 p.m., we're going to be over there at Orange County Choppers Roadhouse
Nice.
in Pinellas Park off 49th Street. That is Tuesday night, April 15th, 7 to 9 p.m. That is going to be myself, Capt Mike Anderson. It's going to be a lot of fun for sure. And I've already talked to some other people that are coming. Hubbard's Marina swag given away, Real Animals swag, Angle coolers, Bull Bay rods. Going to be a good time. Plus, there's killer food and killer drinks right there at OCC Roadhouse as well. It's a great location, free parking, free entry. So it should be a great time. Hopefully we see you for that event. And we're going to do that monthly as well. So we'll have some more dates coming up on that. I believe it's going to be every third Tuesday of every month at OCC Roadhouse. So keep that in mind. Mark your calendars. All right. With that, let's go ahead and do our 39-hour giveaway. I do want to give a shout out. Don Schuett hit us with another 1,000 stars. Thank you, Don. Oh, another 1,400 stars. So that makes 3,000 tonight, Don. Appreciate you, buddy. Brian Eakins, Noah Smith, David Wack, Garrick Young, and Megali Garcia. Paul Sabatus as well. So appreciate all the stars tonight for sure, guys. One last thing, Josh reminded me, VSPC voting, the Visit St. Pete Clearwater voting. If you go to hubbardsmarina.com and right on the top of the Hubbard's Marina page website is Vote for Hubbard's Marina for Best of St. Pete Clearwater. If you click on that banner, it's going to take you to the voting page. And if you scroll down, Best Boat Experience, Hubbard's Marina Fishing. So make sure you're voting every day. There's also other categories like Best Water Activity. We're not listed. So you can write in your own nominee and just write Hubbard's Marina for Best Water Activity. Maybe Hubbard's Marina Dolphin Tour. And then scroll down. There's also like down here a little ways. There is a things to do. Best Family Fun. We're not listed. So you can write in your own nominee. Hubbard's Marina Island Trips. So there's a lot of different categories there. There's a lot of different things. So make sure you check out the Best of St. Pete Clearwater and vote daily. It's open until March 28th. So you have a few more days to vote daily. With that, don't forget about our tattoo special.
Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
we got some new tattoos.
Oh, really? I saw some of that. And I want to say hey to everyone that said hi to me.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Lots
having
of
me
shout
on
outs
here,
for
guys.
Captain Will tonight for sure. So if you go to hubbardsmarina.com, click info, click Marina info, and then hit Hubbard's Marina Tattoos. We've got some brand new tattoos. Look at that one.
Oh, nice.
That's pretty. This is Tim Duncan's buddy. And this one came in today. He's going to be joining the Regulars Club and going out on the 39-hour trip. And this one's another 2 hogfish back-to-backs. And the other one didn't make it on yet, but we had a really cool one come in with the mahi-mahi all together, too. So, no, that new one, I sent it in WhatsApp, but it was after the other two.
The sticker
The
one
third
is
one I
more
said.
my speed, you know.
There's some cool ones.
No, The taste on was more my
No, that's actually, someone brought that up. I was at a meeting. I forget what fisheries meeting it was, but the conversation came up. Somebody was making fun of me, and they brought up the full tattoo thing. And then someone was like, I would do it if it was a temporary tattoo. And I was like, that doesn't count. But then they brought up the idea. They were like, dude, you should have temporary tattoos in the office so people could do that. So we're going to do that.
Yep.
I looked it up.
What?
The temporary tattoos.
And is that a thing? Can we get temporary tattoos?
We can get temporary tattoos. We can even get semi-permanent tattoos that'll last for 2 months.
Nice.
I'm in there.
I don't have a tattoo.
We'll tell people they're temporary, and then they put them on, and they find out they last for 2 months. It'll be great.
They put them all over their face. They're like, yeah. 2 months later.
Just, you're not allowed to order the Captain Dylan Hubbard ones, all right? I'm going to put that out there. I already told Lori that. That's a rule. All right, so anything else you want to add?
No, not really. Not
Yeah,
too much.
we covered a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right, so our 39-hour giveaway is brought to you by our friends over at Innovative Pools and Spa. Remember, Innovative Pools and Spa brings you 35 years of experience building pools in the Tampa Bay area. They're continuing the legacy of their family or their father's company, which was recognized as a top pool builder in the Tampa Bay area. Plus, they continue to raise the bar in pool design, construction, and features. They have an unparalleled passion for the industry. Call them today at 727-788-1650 or visit them online at innovativepoolsandspa.net for an estimate to see why Innovative Pools and Spa is a top choice for our community. With that, let's see who won our Innovative Pools and Spa giveaway for the 39-hour fishing trip. For one lucky winner, 39-hour trip winner is Dan Bennett. What's going on, buddy? Dan Bennett is currently healing from a surgery, I believe, on his hip surgery. So he's a 39-hour guy, though. So
nice.
He's got something to rehab for now, buddy.
Let's go.
You got to get healthy. Hopefully, we'll see you guys next week. Supporters After Show will start up here shortly. We're going to keep it a little short, though, since the main show ran late. But that'll start up, what do you think, Josh, 9:20? No. 9:20, guys, for the Supporters After Show. We'll see you there. Hopefully, we'll see you next week. Remember, every Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. You guys have a good night. We'll see you soon. And don't forget, if you're too busy to go fishing,
you're just too busy.
There it is, guys. Thanks for coming, Will, and thanks for being a part of our Hubbard's Marina family, y'all.